I really believe, that purity is something that we don't lose, but we continue to grow in our journey of life. And I think that is a really freeing perspective, because this whole thing around, oh, you did it, you're bad, you're just scorned. Like, I think that's so toxic.
Hello and welcome to the Overflow Podcast. This is a podcast on a mission to discover how you and I can live a life of abundance, full to overflowing. In Season 5, we're learning how to cultivate thriving relationships and how, through the good times and the bad, we can maintain the overflow. This is episode 43. My name is Carl Lindsay and I'm joined by my friend and co-host Filip Miller-Savlovich. How's it going, Filip?
Hey, Carl. Buenos dias.
This is the last episode of the season.
Oh, that is really sad.
It's been a good season, though.
Oh, it has been probably one of my favorites.
Yeah.
I've really, really enjoyed it.
Why favorite? Like, what are the conversations that you kind of stood out to
You know, people always tell me I'm like a sappy romantic. You like talking about relationships. And the truth is I really do. And so this has been just fun because it's a personally very meaningful conversation to have. I think it's also extremely practical
and
for people.
Applicable, yeah.
Yeah, to the young adult experience. And so I really like giving people things and content, resources, experiences, the amazing guests that we had in the season to just encounter that will really bless their life immediately right now.
Right. And I mean, one of the things that's going to come out in today's episode, just that idea of planning for the future as well. So it's not just now, it's pursuing that overflowing life, which is what we're all about here.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, when you think about the next season of your life, a lot of it is built on the choices you make right now in terms of romance. And so this is a really important topic.
Yeah.
What do you think about for you? Why was this a meaningful season?
It got into the little details of the things that I've been thinking about a lot, especially those first few episodes with attachment theory with Dr. Torben. That was mind-blowing in many ways. Really cool to learn about that.
Sure.
And Renella's conversations as well, just setting yourself up for...
Yeah.
Because as you know, as I've said through this season, I'm 10 months into a relationship now, but it's still in that early stages. It's not, you're married 13 years. So I think those are the couple of reasons, just thinking about personal growth.
It's fun that both of us, well, I wouldn't say, okay, it's been fun for you to be single, but I will say it's good that we have the different dynamics between the two of us, being married for a while, you're in the dating phase still. And so I think that adds some value to it as well for our listeners. Hey, you might be married, you might be dating, you might be still in the search and wondering what in the world's going on. So
exactly. I mean, Aaron's conversation, that was the most downloaded episode in the first 7 days we've had. So,
oh, wow.
Everyone loved that.
Yeah, what to do with singleness. It's a very, very important topic. Well, today's conversation, I hope, becomes a loved one as well for our listeners. We are talking with Angela and Carson Blair. If you don't know who they are, you will discover who they are, and you will wonder, how in the world did you two get to interview them? And I still pinch myself, how in the world they are going to be on our episode, but they are such an amazing couple. Angela, I met her first. She came and spoke at the University Church for a conference on relationships, particularly kind of on wholeness, purity, dating. And her story is very fascinating. She was on NBC's kind of similar show like The Bachelor, and she was on that show. She won.
Whoa.
She won the whole thing.
Okay.
And for many people, it was like, there's no way this girl is going to win. Particularly because she had a stance of just purity, of saying, I'm waiting for marriage. I'm not going to sleep with this person. This isn't going to end in the romantic escapade before there's a ring and an I do and a covenant before God. And yet then the story shifts and it goes on to a different way. And it's like, boom, she marries Carson, and just, wow, how that happens is awesome. And now Carson, her husband, is an incredible guy too. He has a great story as well in a similar way and commitment. And he also is a pro athlete as well. And so he has a very different perspective on going about this. And so you're going to hear from both of them, and it will be very, very interesting. And I hope that you'll be blessed by their story and who they are.
Well, before we press play, I just want to remind you guys, check out our website, choosetooverflow.com, and our Instagram at choosetooverflow. We want to hear from you. We want to hear what your favorites have been. So hit us up, send us a message. And yeah, don't forget we've got a reflection guide, a downloadable summary of today's episode, so you can take that home, share those ideas with some friends.
Yeah.
And yeah, choosetooverflow.com.
And I want to encourage all of you. It really helps us when you share these episodes with people to increase the exposure to them, to our podcast, but also would you put a rating on one of the platforms of this podcast? It really helps getting that message out there about the podcast. We're always looking for a 5-star review, and give us a great comment. It really helps. We love you, care for you. So glad you've been part of this journey with us on The Overflow.
Yeah, so stay tuned. We'll be talking about season 6, what will be happening next year in a little while. So look out for an update with that as well. In the meantime, let's press play.
Well, today we are so excited to have both Angela and Carson Blair on here. They are a couple that just got married this last year, but you might know them from a different space and just being married. You might know Carson from being a pro baseball player. You might know Angela from being on NBC's dating show, but you will also get to know them for the commitment that they made to each other. That is really interesting that we're going to explore with them. So Carson and Angela, thank you so much for being on the podcast.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah, welcome.
This will be fun.
Awesome.
So now some of our guests maybe don't know you very well. Just give us like a 30-second kind of moment just to get to know both of you, just who you are and kind of what brought you here today.
Awesome. Well, I don't know if we have any Enneagram fans out there, but I'll just start off by saying I'm a 7, so I'm fueled by adventure and fun.
Me too.
Carson is a 5, so he's the stabilizer in the relationship. But I'm a little bit about me. I'm from Texas. I went to University of Texas at Austin for college. My entire career has pretty much been in media and broadcast journalism. Been really fun traveling really the world, covering incredible stories of faith and entertainment in the faith space. And actually I have my own podcast I just launched called All Strings Attached, which has so much to do with our story and just my passion for helping people in love and dating. So
All Strings Attached.
And I'm a new wifey. COVID bride over here.
Nice. You can find All Strings Attached at all the podcast platforms and everywhere.
Yes, Apple, Spotify. And we have a pretty awesome newsletter that goes out each week, which I highly recommend if you want entertaining bad date stories.
Okay. We'll put the link in the description. What about you, Carson?
Yeah, so I'll kind of try to give you a little bit of my background and then tie the connection to Angela. But grew up in a super small town in North Texas called Argyle, and grew up in a real small private Christian school. Only had about 80 kids in my class.
Okay.
Was really fortunate to be in just a great environment with a lot of people around me that really cared about me and really cared about my success and were really willing to pour into me and invest in me. And so from there, I actually signed with the Boston Red Sox out of high school and spent 7 years playing with their organization.
Wait, how'd you get to the Red Sox? How'd you get to the Red Sox from a little private Christian school?
That's amazing. Oh my goodness.
You know what? I probably couldn't draw it up again, but it was really just following like what I enjoyed doing, and then looking up one day and realizing that like, hey, I can maybe pay for my college doing this, and then, like once I got to the point where I was like, okay, I'm pretty sure I could pay for my college playing this game, then I was like, you know what?
Let's get pro.
Why don't I just keep going and see if I can make some money playing this game? And so I was eventually presented with the decision between, okay, summer reading to go to Tulane University or take a signing bonus from the Red Sox. And so at 18, I was like, yeah, no brainer. I'm going to go play baseball and take the money. I'm not taking the books and going to school.
That's great.
So yeah, it was a fun journey.
Okay.
So then you played with the Red Sox and then?
Yeah, so from the Red Sox organization, went over to the Oakland A's, and that's where I did make my major league debut, which kind of ties into the story of how we met. So once I did get called up, I heard everybody say, like, you should create an Instagram, build your own brands, do all those things they tell you to interact with the fans. I was like, great, let's do this. I'm on board. And so I actually created Instagram, started looking at how everybody was interacting on there, and I started looking at what people's profiles were like and what their real lives were like, and I just like instantly was disgusted with it. So hated it, never posted anything again on it after my first 4 initial pictures.
But that's how we met, through Instagram.
Wait,
yeah, okay. Exactly. So to take this full circle, once I had created that profile, one of my baseball friends, actually, I believe he liked a video of hers where she was speaking out, encouraging women in their faith and encouraging women and telling them that they had, intrinsic value to themselves, that they didn't need a guy to validate them. And I was like, whoa, that's really impressive. And, of course I stopped and watched the video because she's hot. Like that's the original reason I stopped. So I was like, man, I just really want to talk to this girl. So I didn't know anything about her. Didn't know where she lived. Didn't know if she was in a relationship or anything. So I just sent her a super awkward, very professional DM and just said like, hey, I think we share some common beliefs. I'd love to just talk with you. But something very, very awkward like that. And so I actually had to Google how to send that DM.
You didn't want it to be like a post or some like public thing.
Yeah.
I was sitting there thinking, I was like, man, I just created this profile. Like I built it with the purpose to engage like with fans. And so I was like, you know what? I don't want the first thing I ever post on there to be trying to holler at a random chick and it goes out to the masses in the world. So I had to Google it, figure out even how to do it in the first place, and then sent her a super awkward message and told myself that I'd check it every day at 5 p.m. I was like, okay, I'll look at 5 and see if she responded. And so I gave myself 7 days and checked it every single day at 5. And then the 7th day, I was like, all right, man, that was just dumb. Like, I'm embarrassed. Like, I shouldn't have ever done that. Why did I ever think that would work? And so I just deleted the message on my end so I didn't have to look at my embarrassment and shame and rejection. And so I just acted like it never happened.
Yeah.
And then fast forward 18 months later, I got a response from her, and I was like,
18 months. Wow.
Still exists? Like, I remember her. And
yeah,
so
I didn't see it for a little while.
Wow.
Yeah,
now,
so fortunately, I was still single, and so I was like, yeah, let's pick up this conversation, see where it goes.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Thanks, Instagram.
That's awesome. No, we're not advertising for Instagram, but they do say love can happen on social media. So I like it. Now we got to go backwards a bit here. So Angela, tell us your story.
Yeah. So I guess starting when I was young, right? We all have our childhood experiences that shape us so much. I experienced a divorced family. My parents divorced when I was 7, and I was the oldest of 4. I saw so much, and I always wanted, you kind of see things you don't want, right? Like I always wanted an incredible marriage one day and family. Yeah. And my parents, I did grow up in a home where I went to church. So I would hear messages about, purity and what all that means and what that looks like as I was getting into my teen years. And so I think between just seeing my family experiences and my faith, I felt just really convicted about, wow, I really want to wait until I can trust someone with my heart. And so that decision I never knew would become just such a big theme in my life, and just now the things I'm working on. Because I went through college. I was working with Fox Sports in college. I was in a sorority. I was definitely around the party crowd always, but I was always, I didn't do a lot of the other things that people were doing, and no judgment, whatever. But for me, my personal choice was just to wait for marriage. And I ended up after college being asked if I was single. I was. Would you do a reality dating show? no, that's insane. And they were like, no, just come hear us out. And long story short, I did decide to fly to Los Angeles. I went through a casting experience and found myself being chosen to be on an NBC dating show produced by Eva Longoria. So, of course, that decision I made when I was younger was highlighted episode 1 that I'm waiting for marriage. And it kind of became this like Angela the Virgin. Like it became this banner, I felt at times. But I now look back, I see how God used it. I ended up being the girl chosen on the show and really was interviewed by outlets not about the show, but about that decision to wait. And it really, you know, I'll be honest, like I went through my 20s though, like talking about it, being interviewed about it, but then I'd look around and feel like there were no guys that I just felt like I connected with, that was truly respected that decision. And I had so many moments of insecurity, but I still, at the end of the day, like leaned on my faith and just trusting God. But it took a while. Like I was 32 when we got married. So going all through my 20s, I think though I went through that because I can relate now to so many girls feeling that, oh my gosh, where is my guy? Like our culture puts so much pressure on, I think girls like to feel something's wrong with them if they're not in a serious relationship or if they're not being pursued at that exact moment. And I think that's something that definitely needs to shift that perspective. So yeah, it's a little bit about my faith journey, but so glad I waited because it was worth it now that I'm here with Carson. So
wow.
Right. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, and I guess one of the things that I'll share along those lines is she was talking about as far as pressure, and she was, 32 when we met, or you were 31 when we met.
Yeah.
So we met when I was 28, and I never had a girlfriend in my life up until that point. So Angela was my first and only girlfriend, and my last.
Amen.
But everybody always thought that was weird too. Like, dude, what in the world? Like, how are you ever gonna like know?
Why did you guys?
Yeah, what gave you that strong stance on the whole subject of purity and just
and sex
relationships
before marriage? Why would you not do that when so many are? And it just really seems counterintuitive to what everyone would think of as an individual who's in the spotlight. You might use the word celebrity, a pro athlete, someone on TV. Like, we would imagine these individuals are promiscuous or just don't have Christian values, and yet you two were the opposite. Why?
Yeah, I'll try to unpack that. I think there's a lot in there. But I guess to go back towards the why, I think mine is probably a little more elementary than Angela's was, and I think I honestly viewed it as a little bit more of a challenge. It was something that I had heard about and been in, like I mentioned before, just a great environment in my school, and my mom was also an outstanding influence on me, and so I think I almost viewed it as a challenge of like pursuing one woman is what I wanted. And then as I kind of grew up and got older, I was 100% what you call a hopeless romantic. Like I was like, okay, like that restaurant, like I only want to go there with someone that's meaningful to me. Like I don't want to go on this cool trip until it's with someone that I actually love. So I was that like totally hopeless romantic person.
I like
so
it.
I think I viewed it as like a challenge from when I was very young is probably the best way to look at it for me. But I always wanted to experience as much as I possibly could with that one person. Because I always think that your perceived enjoyment of an experience is incredibly elevated when you experience that with someone that you love. And so I think that applies across all different things, but I definitely want to share as many things with my future wife as possible.
Angela, where did your grounding or your stance come from? You mentioned before you'd heard sermons and things. Is that kind of the basis, or did you develop it somewhere else?
I think I am a hopeless romantic as well, and I really didn't look at it as wow, this sucks and I can't do this. It was stepping out of the instant moment and looking at the long-term timeline of how awesome that would be to have that as a gift for my husband. Like, I always just looked at it as, this is a gift I want to save for my husband. And I knew the man that I would marry one day would be a gift, and that would be something I was glad I did. I had to get there though to feel super comfortable and confident to say that publicly, because I definitely had a lot of people laugh or say, no, you need sex to fall in love, or you need sex to know if you're compatible, which is another interesting thing. I just did an interview on All Strings Attached, and the sex therapist said that is the biggest lie ever. Sex is a learned behavior. That's ridiculous to think night one, it's like you fully know each other's body, like how the movie portrays it, you know? And so I definitely really looked at the long term through my motivation in those, you know, situations where I could have made another choice, but I said no. So.
Yeah, got it.
Man, I just got to speak into that just for a moment. I really can attest to what you're saying, Angela. You know, when I think about my wife and I, we've been married going on 13 years this summer.
Yes.
We got married pretty young. We were 20 and 22. But if I'm being very forthright, the sex at year 1 and the sex at year 12, I mean, wow, it is just continually experiencing greater depths of just understanding each other in that way. It's not just elementary in its approach. I mean, it's truly like something you continually get better and learn, and you understand each other and likes and dislikes. And so when people really portray the romance of a movie, that is such a misnomer. I mean, you cannot be fully known nor fully free with someone that you're going to have a one-night stand with. It's not someone that you can feel fully comfortable with your body with. I mean, it is so far from that, you know? But when you have a committed, godly, covenanted relationship, there is a spirit of vulnerability that you can work into together, where it becomes a beautiful act and something that you can cherish. And so I really agree with that so much that, you know, hey, this portrayal is not true. And looking at our own relationship so many years later, absolutely, it's in a sweeter space together, because I have a greater depth of love for my wife and she for me. And so I want to encourage both those who are waiting for marriage and even those who are married and like, dude, I just got married, I don't know what we're doing. Yeah, you don't know really. And you're going to keep learning at this thing, you know? So, and I want to tell people who've been in those spaces where, hey, you might have been premature in having sex and it wasn't a good experience and you're like really scared and you're doubting like what is to come. Don't judge everything by that. You know, I know some people who've had really bad encounters and they're like, I'm really frightened of sex now. And it doesn't need to be like that.
When someone is not a Christian, like we've talked about the biblical values, and you did talk about the idea of waiting for yourself to be a gift for your spouse. What is it? What else is there that determines our belief? What should be determining our belief, especially if we're not Christians? If there's someone who's not Christian listening, when you take God out of the equation, why is it still a good idea to wait?
Yeah. You want to go ahead? Or?
Yeah, I would say I'll go ahead and speak to that first, just because, like, I grew up in a locker room my whole life. And so I always got that question all the time, like, dude, what are you doing? Like, why?
Right.
And so, of course, I wasn't going to speak in biblical terms to anybody in the locker room or somebody that has zero type of faith background. So honestly, my response was always, because I just want the strongest relationship with my future wife as possible. Like I want her to know that I'm fully committed to her. And also, like, once we are in that relationship, like, I don't want her to have any reason to doubt me. Like, if leading up to that relationship, like, hey, I was willing to wait for you, then what in the world, like, would give you any reason to doubt our commitment and our relationship, like, once we are together? So I would always frame it that way. And the response was always like, oh, I get it. Like, I respect that. maybe not for me, but I respect it.
Right.
Yeah. So powerful. I love this question, because this truly is the heartbeat and the mission of my show, All Strings Attached, because, faith is a part of this, but we now today have overwhelming scientific evidence that shows sex is not just, we didn't have a child together, so that means there's no repercussions. We see so many things coming out now through mental health, especially with women. It really impacts us a lot more, the feeling of regret and anxiety. There's study after study that, I did research over the last year, really, by the American Psychology Association,
Okay.
Psychology Today. We've got Harvard. We've got all these Ivy Leagues coming out with these studies talking about the mental impact. And it does, unfortunately, affect women more than men, but guys too, with that feeling of regret. And then, there's also just, I know we've all heard this whole STD argument, but when you really study what STDs do, especially for future fertility for women, we have babies being born blind or with serious issues today because the mom had an STD, which I think our culture doesn't realize the long-term impact of those things.
Wow.
And so it's really alarming when you study and you connect the dots to understanding, we see sex pushed on us so much in our culture.
Right.
But let's also look at, why is it so pushed? Well, I think it obviously turns people's eyes, like it's like, it lights up a part of your brain. But also, for marketing and just what industries benefit from that. Like the contraceptive industry, it's a $300 billion a year industry.
Wow.
STI care and prevention, that's a $200 billion industry. There's a lot of companies benefiting too from this idea that there's safe sex or it's no big deal. And I think it's really time. Our world is analyzing so many things right now for people to really connect the dots and realize, just because you're not maybe getting pregnant, like there are other impacts of sex. And so that's a really heavy answer, but I'm just super passionate because I think it's really important to just step back and look at, the full picture here.
I really like what both of you said, Carson. You're kind of hitting it from the emotional and relational standpoint of just wanting a better connection. And Angela, you're bringing out this reality of like, listen, there are long-term mental and emotional effects that will be detrimental to you. And then let's just be honest, there are financial gains for others in this
promoting it.
Yeah, from both the pharmaceutical standpoint, just the unfortunate byproduct of getting STIs, they benefit from that. But then also just the way our culture sells products today. It is completely sexualized. You watch any commercial, it is sold in some way with some form of intimate relation. So yeah, that is so true.
I want to ask if you have any specific, or maybe there's a favorite study of yours that you just mentioned, that it's what are the results that it's kind of demonstrated in when people do have premarital sex?
Yeah, I think one interesting thing is Harvard did a study on human happiness and human flourishing, which is one of the longest studies ever conducted in human history. And they found the answer to optimal fulfillment is a long-term committed relationship. And they followed people throughout their life in this study. It's really incredible. And so, so Filip, you're just you're hitting A+ because you married younger and you're gonna have this long relationship. And they found that for us as humans, just flourishing, that type of scenario in your life is really beneficial rather than 30 relationships. Like there's something to that.
Right.
But when it comes to the mental aspect, if you have had sex, they've found they found higher anxiety in people with the more partners they've had. And I don't want to like just talk all like, oh, you're going to have mental issues if you've done this, you know?
Yeah.
I also want to say, I think just because Carson and I have made this decision, we are no better, right? Like, or holier than thou, just because we waited. And I think there's a lot of shame around this topic. I think there's a lot of like, because we all do things we wish, oh, probably shouldn't have done that, you know?
Sure.
But I just recently spoke and I said, you know, a lot of people think purity is this thing that you have and you mess up and you lose it and you're just like, oh, okay, it's just all over. But I really believe, you know, that purity is something that we don't lose, but we continue to grow in our walk of faith or the journey of life. And I think that is a really freeing perspective because all of us need to realize like none of us are perfect. And this whole thing around, oh, you did it, you're bad, you're just scorned. Like, I think that's so toxic for
I want to jump on that because that was one of my questions a little bit later. How does someone go about pressing reset if they have messed up and they think, oh, I made that mistake, but I don't want to continue that path. I want to press reset. If they've fallen short of that ideal that God has set up. So yeah, how do you continue in that path of purity that you're talking about?
Yeah, so Angela will probably have a little more eloquent and thoughtful answer to this than I would, but if I'm ever evaluating situation or decision or circumstance, then I always think the mindset should be, okay, learn from your experience, whatever that was, positive or negative, and then everything should be forward looking. Like your decisions, everything that you can control now is in the future. Whatever's happened has happened. So whether we're talking about relationships, whether we're talking about sex, whether we're talking about business decisions, investments, whatever, learn from the past, and then your focus should always be, okay, from what I've learned, I can look back at the past and pick out different habits or characteristics about myself, and what can I learn from that to then affect my decisions going forward. And that's kind of how I think about it. And
I like that.
I think that same principle kind of applies to sex and relationships too.
Right.
Good.
Yeah. I'd say you know, we're so focused on loving other people, but love yourself. Have grace on yourself, realize all of us mess up. And if you have a past and you're wanting to maybe have a change, I think really pausing. And one thing that I love that Carson did while we were dating, I think this was like one of the pivotal moments in our relationships because I was thinking of moving to Dallas from New York. I was living in New York City. I was either going to move to Dallas or Los Angeles for my career. And he sends me this exercise called self-authoring. Who does the self-authoring?
It's Jordan Peterson.
I love that guy. Yeah.
Baller psychologist.
Yes, he is.
But this exercise really helped me think about what do I really want? And it's kind of this like exercise you do that works backwards and can help you make decisions that lead to what you want. And so I was like, okay, I want to be married. I want to have kids. And I was like, wait a minute. I'm going to Los Angeles mainly only for my job. Everyone knows dating in LA is like incredibly difficult, especially with the kind of values I want to stay, have. And then I had met Carson and I was just like, okay, like this is helping me realize I need to make some different decisions. Because that's like saying, oh, I want to do this, I want to do that, but then your actions reflect something completely different. So I really think journaling and like writing out what you want can really help too. Just clarify like any path you want to go on.
Yeah, man, I love that. I love that. If I were to add one thing that I think pastors have done that hasn't been helpful when talking about sex, and if people have had sex before, there's
Why are you going to add it if it's not helpful?
It's not helpful because I want to speak contrary to that. People have probably heard it. I know. Thank you challenging me. That's good. That's good. There's this idea, hey, you have a piece of paper, and if you give your heart to so many people, you rip off a piece of paper, and then when you come to your spouse, it's like, I have nothing, or the sticky tape thing, it's like love is a sticky tape and
gets less sticky, right?
Gets less sticky, And I think there are truths to that. But I think what happens, unfortunately, then people feel as though if they have had sex, then it's like, dang, I am
all
so
over.
marred.
Yeah.
It is done. I've got nothing to give my future spouse. Like, that's it, you know? But I think what I want to speak into that is, yes, there are consequences. That's for sure. You're an adult. You were making some adult decisions. You might have been a teenager, but you were making adult decisions when you had sex. But the thing that I believe in and that I know that we all kind of hold to is the notion of God's grace and redemption. And I think that the Lord can redeem a broken past. I believe that God can sanctify and make us holy again. And I believe in what you said, Angela and Carson, is just the notion of like purity can grow as we draw near to Jesus. And he will redeem those broken spaces. But there are consequences, you know? So it's like there is God's redemption. There is the beauty of his grace. But it's like, hey, as Jesus told the woman there that caught in adultery, like, hey, don't go back to that space, you know? Don't go back to those spaces that you were in that were so detrimental to you. You've received God's grace. Now go forth in the new light. And so I just want to encourage everyone that's listening right now, like, man, cherish the grace of Jesus, but don't take it for granted to go back and forth. Really live into his grace and let his power cherish what is to come potentially for you in terms of waiting for this second, third, fourth, fifth, 100th time that you've had sex already before. Let God give you the power to cherish what is to come, even regardless of the past. So.
Another question for you guys that are married. I am not.
We're praying for you, Karl.
Yeah, thanks. But I wanted to ask what you guys think about the difference between, or why is there such a big difference between sex inside of marriage and outside of marriage? Like, you might have held that purity stance, but then you're a month out from getting married, maybe, and then you just decide that may as well just go now. Like, why is there a difference once it comes to the wedding?
Ooh, that's a good question.
And not necessarily, like, it doesn't have to be connected with an engaged couple, but just in general.
So that I've never thought of that before. So hopefully this comes out right, because I'm just saying it as I'm thinking it. I would say there's something spiritual and supernatural about just after you say I do, and the level, the tone it sets for your marriage. I think if you're right about to get married, like, okay, you're going to be together the rest of your lives, Lord willing. So what is like another month to wait? Like, I think there is just something about after you make that covenant together. And I think the same thing applies. I know a lot of couples today feel like, oh, let's just move in together. Let's just merge our lives as if, you know, because I know I want to be with you. And I mean, I was at Carson's a lot when we were dating. I actually had a crazy living situation during our dating, so I was at his place all the time. But still, us like waiting to live together, like, it just, I don't know, like, it sets a tone for our marriage.
Absolutely.
And just the high regard we hold that for.
Absolutely.
I don't know what your thoughts are.
Absolutely. But if I just interjected for a moment, I know one study that talks about the fact that couples who cohabitate before they get married actually have a higher prevalence of divorce later. So you think of kind of what society says, oh, the trajectory is, okay, we'll date, then we move in, and then we'll get married. But it's like, you actually just did something that is going to be worse off for you, because you don't have that high level of commitment. So if things don't go well while you're living together, you're just like, well, you know what? We didn't get married anyways, so you just better move out.
Yeah. I think you could easily get comfortable. And you also, when you move in together, like, you see each other's little quirks.
Yeah.
Like, maybe Carson wouldn't have wanted to marry me because I don't put things back in the same place every time. It's like, babe, can you just put it back in the same spot? I'm like, I was on the phone, or I was like, I'll put it back in a bit. Those little things.
It's true. That's real life.
Oh, I love it. Carson, now from your perspective, when you talk about, okay, living in the world of pro sports, I mean, how did people respond to you when you're like, dude, I'm waiting to get married. I will not kind of go into that. I mean, how did they look at that? And how would you encourage like young guys and girls right now in the world who are like, yeah, I'm debating this. I don't know if I should or shouldn't wait. Like, how did that go for you? And what would you say to those waiting?
Yeah, so that immediately kind of made me laugh when you were asking the question, like how did people react to that? Because of course there were all kinds of different reactions, but some of the ones I remember the most is like, dude, you are just a waste. Like like you're a good looking dude, but like you are an absolute waste. Like just give me some of that, and then I can go have fun, and then we're all even. And, so I'd always hear things like that, like, dude, you're just a waste, or like at least help me like, go have fun, or at least like be productive, like go help me find chicks, like things like that, or like common things that guys would say in the locker room when I'd say that. But so most of the time it usually started off something kind of funny like that, like guys would just like make jokes about it and be like, whoa, dude, you're crazy, like are you ever just gonna give up, like you're just like wasting your time. And then the follow up to that was always like, okay, like, yeah, I really, really respect that. Cause I'd tell them like the why that we talked about earlier. I'd always tell them that I wanted that committed relationship, and I want that relationship to be as strong as possible.
Yeah.
So, but what I would tell someone that's sitting there like battling that is, like it's normal to question your decision and question your thoughts. If you're not, you're far stronger than I am. I'll tell you that much. I definitely sat there and had long, just internal dialogues with myself of like, okay, is this still the path that I want? And eventually, I'd always come down to like, okay, no, this is what I do want long term. This is the promise that I've made to myself and to the Lord, that I want to wait for this woman. And so that's just what it always like ended up coming back to. But I doubted it all the time.
Yeah. But I can say on the other side of the coin, now that we are married, I can't tell you how many times I've like looked at him and just had like happy tears. Like it's so awesome, like to share that with each other. And it's an incredible bond that we share. And I think God wants this kind of love for each of us in our relationships. And I said this, the other day, I said, I think it's the most underrated decision that exists today. Like I really think it is just so empowering for your marriage. And it's easy to think only in the instant, but I think what Carson and I both shared is that long-term perspective before we knew each other, because we did have hard moments. So
you've kind of touched on the whole culture that is trending in that direction. Phil and I were talking about the other day, like there's a lot of apps that are kind of targeted to basically getting you in bed as fast as possible. And so I just wanted to ask what you guys think about the culture that trajectory, and what do you have to say about the actual trajectory itself?
I think I'll address this from kind of a straightforward standpoint, but the trajectory I think is accelerating dangerously. And I think it is this kind of more common principle that our society sees as a whole is this whole concept of immediate gratification. And I want this now, like I'm the most important thing. There is no like importance of the collective anymore. So I think it is 100% fits within the whole societal trend right now of I want what I want right now, and I'm going to do whatever I can to get it. And I think it'll honestly be very destructive for a lot of people in their young formative years. And then they'll look up one day and be like, man, okay, well, probably shouldn't have made all those decisions when I was 20. And I think that's common for people
Right.
in general, whether it's like sexual regret, career regret, business regret, anything. But yeah, I think it's accelerating in a downward spiral.
Yeah. I think a lot of people, though, I talk to a lot of girls, mostly just with my heart for that season of singleness. And I think there's also a lot of people fed up and seeing through the dating apps, but it still feels like, well, this is just how it is. I'm just going to do this because that's just how it is. And I really want to empower people, if you do feel that conviction that you don't want to do that, be confident in that decision, because it's saying, hey, I respect myself and I respect who I'm going to marry. You know, it's this pressure to feel like you have to do that to win their heart. And I think that's just such a lie. I don't think that's accurate.
And I mean, Carson, you demonstrated the peer pressure that you're kind of talking about, Angela, is, I mean, it's going to be very prevalent in the locker room where you kind of experience, and it is possible to hold up to that, to your own personal convictions. Yeah, that's good.
I do want to bring up one thing now that I'm just realizing. When we talk about why wait, and if I were to bring up a kind of a biblical analogy, okay, I'm gonna be put on the pastor hat for a moment. You know, there's this beautiful story of Hosea and Gomer in the Bible. Hosea was an Old Testament prophet, and the Lord literally brought to him this idea and revelation, like, I want you to marry a prostitute. And to many people, they'll be like, whoa, this is a strange story. But just capture this. Like, he called these people of his, Israel, the Israel back then, like this prostitute. They said, hey, listen, you have wandered from me for so long, but I'm yearning for an intimate, committed relationship. I'm yearning for this mutuality, this monogamy, this one-on-one. And so, okay, people will say, well, there's no scripture in the Bible that says don't have sex before marriage. But there is a beautiful theology where God calls his people and says, I yearn for a pure relationship with you. And the cool thing, though, in that story, too, is like, okay, we see that Gomer, the prostitute in the story, she leaves Hosea. She leaves this prophet multiple times, like, and goes back to her lifestyle because it was more comfortable there. She didn't understand what it meant to live in this commitment where one man would love her for the rest of her life. And sometimes we might do that. But then God speaks into the text and he's like, hey, go back and find her. Go back and get her. I want my people to know that I'm always yearning to bring them back into purity, no matter when they make those mistakes. And so I think that's also another thing. It's just like God is going to always be pursuing us regardless of what we've done and where we've been. And so don't let that feeling go away. But then also recognize, yes, the Bible does speak to this issue. I know some people really like to challenge that assumption, but there are many, many illustrations and visualizations of God and purity and this monogamy.
Yeah, so good. I heard this once, and it's relevant to what you're saying, is I think Satan loves to use our shame stories and keep that in our mind and keep us held back. And, you know, that's in anything in life, like business, relationships, whatever that is. Our failures can make us feel frozen. And I think, again, it goes back to that whole grace on ourselves and realizing all of us are just human.
Exactly.
Humans mess up.
Yeah.
We're not infallible.
Yeah. Hey, now if the two of you were to give us, and those of us who are listening right now, some questions or thoughts to think about to kind of reflect on this subject, what kind of questions or thoughts would you leave us with?
Immediately, I would say, ask yourself, what do I really want? And then don't listen to the first thing that comes to mind, because that's probably your immediate reaction. Like, take some time and then, like, actually give yourself some space, do some introspective work, and then, you know, sit down and think through, okay, what do I actually want? And yeah, maybe an exercise like self-authoring is very helpful. I think it is. I would totally advise anybody to do that. And I think once you do that and you do kind of evaluate like, okay, what do I really want? Then a lot of times once you go through that process, you will start thinking a little more long term. And a lot of times just on accident, those things that you want and the actions that need to be taken to get to what you want, a lot of those align biblically. And you look up and you're like, whoa, I didn't even do that on purpose. Like I didn't even go to the Bible and say like, hey, what do I do? I worked in reverse and ended up coming to a similar conclusion. So
I like that.
That would be my suggestion.
Man,
what
Carson,
do you want?
That's brilliant, bro. That's brilliant. It's like, what do I really want? Looking deep into the future, and now how do I line my actions today for that future realization of what I yearn for? Oh, that's good.
Yeah.
Exactly.
He's very introspective. But I would say, younger Angela, and this is just from my perspective, I didn't think of like, oh, what kind of father would he be? What kind of, those you think of more, do we have fun together? Am I attracted? I think when you're really looking for that life partner, I started to see qualities in Carson and I was like, wow, he's going to be an incredible dad. Like he's going to be an incredible leader of our family. A great husband. Like it's a whole nother level when you're talking spending your life with someone. So I think looking at it, I think it's so easy for our culture to be like, are they hot? Are they fun? Like, are we compatible? Those are like the first things on the list, but really stepping back and realizing like, if you want to have kids, like what kind of mother or father are they going to be? And like going through hard things in life together, how do they handle conflict? It's not always like The Bachelor on like everyday life is not always roses. Like you've got to go through hard things together. And I think your ability to communicate, your ability to handle conflict together, if you can do that, like that's an incredible foundation for a healthy relationship. So I think it's not always just, are you attracted? And are you like, it's so much deeper than that.
Man, those are great questions. I love that.
That's good. You've given us lots of wisdom already, but maybe there's something, especially on the idea of sex inside and outside of marriage, and that we haven't talked about.
Or manhood and womanhood.
Yeah, that kind of thing. There's a couple of hundred young adults listening right now, so speaking to them as give us the final word.
Okay, yeah, I'll speak to the dudes out there.
Yeah.
And this is kind of a continuation of your previous question of like, what would you tell them to ask themselves? And I mentioned this when I guess spoke to the audience out there via video, and just said like, every guy just sit there and ask yourself like, okay, what makes a man? Sit there and literally like define that for yourself, and take some time, sit there, think through it, and then compare that to what society defines as a man, what manly characteristics are. Because what we see in common pop culture is manly as far as being like an aggressive, physically strong, heavily partying, heavily drinking, conquering women. Like that's what makes a man. That's what's celebrated and what's elevated.
Dark beer.
Yeah. That's just disgusting. But anyway, those things are considered masculine in our culture and our society, but those things are the furthest thing from masculine. Like I talked about it earlier, like giving into instant gratification, like that's what all those things eventually lead to. It's just people end up behaving in that way just to give into what I want right now. And I don't think that's at all what makes a man. Like making a man is making the tough decisions when it's in opposition of immediate gratification. One of the things that came to my mind when I sat and thought about this is over years as a young kid actually, and I was thinking about, okay, what actually does make a man? And one of the things I came to was refraining from causing harm when you're capable of it. And so that can take a bunch of different forms. That can take the form of physical harm, like restraining from causing harm in a physical manner, like avoiding physical conflict, avoiding fighting. Like 99 times out of 100, it's unnecessary. And it's just ego driven. And then also you can take that into relationships and like, okay, you could cause harm to this individual, to this girl. But you refrain from it. Like you take the higher road. You take the road of discipline. You avoid letting that girl get too attached when you know the outcome would end up harming her heart, or harming her physically. So I think refraining from causing that harm when you're capable of it is one at least characteristic of what makes an actual godly man.
I love that.
So good, man. Do I have to follow that up?
Well, speak to the women. Speak to the women.
Gosh, ladies.
Ladies.
I know it's hard, to feel this pressure that truly goes against our design. We crave romance. We want to be pursued. We want, the fairy tale ending. And right now our world just feels like so confusing with just our design and how God made us. I would say don't always lead with just emotion, because women can tend to be more emotional, and really, take some of these journaling questions we talked about and, listen to those red flags, listen to that gut feeling if something doesn't feel right. I think God is a God of peace. He's a God of order. And I once had someone tell me, Angela, let the decisions for your life and for your heart, let peace be the referee. And I think it's so easy for women to overlook something and be like, oh, well, it'll change. It'll be different. But really, that's not true. And I mean, I do think things can change, obviously, and turn around. But I think just overall, let that gut feeling, you don't feel peace about a certain relationship, listen to that, and I really think trusting God and remembering your worth and not compromising yourself is incredibly important. So I'm here for you though, ladies. I get it. I get the struggle. So you can find me on Instagram and message me. I check all my messages, and I talk
except
to
the ones from Carson,
time, like with their stories, and give them advice, because I know what it's like.
Yeah,
so.
That's awesome. Carl just said you respond to every Instagram post besides the ones from Carson for a year and a half.
Exactly.
Okay, not every, but I try to respond.
No, that's awesome.
Well, yeah. So tell us where we can find. So your podcast, All Strings Attached. Where can we find you on Instagram
or on any other media?
Websites? What?
Yeah, my Instagram and TikTok, and I'm not really on Facebook that much, but Instagram and TikTok is official A Blair, and then All Strings Attached. You can find us on Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok.
Okay.
Carson doesn't even really have Instagram. His last picture is posted in like 2016.
That's awesome.
But if you need to get to Carson, just reach out to me.
Gotta go to my secretary.
Nice. Carson just did it to get the girl, and he walked away. That's it.
Exactly. Once you win the game, you quit.
Bro, what else do you need it for? Yeah.
That's so good.
That's awesome.
Thank you so much for coming on to share with our listeners. It's been great to chat with you and learn from your stories.
Thank you for having us on. This is awesome.
Yeah, thanks for having us. Look forward to seeing y'all soon.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, thank you guys. Love you both, and blessings to you. And we want to just end with a prayer, as we always do on this podcast. And so, God, may you bless our friends listening today. Give them that hope and encouragement through the story and testimony of Carson and Angela. Jesus, I pray for those who have fallen in this way, in an act that they hoped they would save for the future spouse. But God, I pray that you would bring them cleansing and grace. And Jesus, I pray for those who are on the edge of wondering, just, Lord, is it even worth it? God, would you encourage them, give them strength and resilience and perseverance. And Father, I pray also that you would fill us now with your peace. In Jesus' name, amen. We want to encourage all of you, as we always do, choose today to overflow.